This song was inspired by the life of Saint Francis. Father, now that I wander with thee, flowers and fields are alive with thy joy. All that I owned to thee I've given, now I sing in thy love I am free. Father, now that I dance in thy name, birds and animals share in my song. All my sorrows, all my merriment, join in music to set hearts aflame. Father, now that I wander with thee, flowers and fields are alive with thy joy. All that I own to thee I've given, now I sing in thy love I am free. Father, now that I dance in thy name, birds and animals share in my song. All my sorrows, all my merriment, join in music to set hearts aflame. All my sorrows, all my merriment, join in music to set hearts aflame.
I would like to welcome everyone in the world that is watching this broadcast from the Temple of Light. My name is Nayaswami Ananta. My wife, Nayaswami Maria, is with us this morning. And it's really a joy to reach out across the entire globe and share Master's teachings and vibrations of peace in a world that is in dire need of peace and these teachings. So thank you for joining us. I would like to read from Rays of the One Light, which is parallel passages from the Bible and the Gita, assembled by Swami Kriyananda and based on Yogananda's teachings. This week the topic is the inner kingdom. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. Most people imagine that the inner kingdom, as Jesus described it, lacks the fascination they attribute to sense life, the bright lights, the diverse attractions, the joys and the laughter. Little do they realize what a vast universe exists in their own selves. There are many passages in the Old and New Testaments of the Bible that describe aspects of this inner kingdom. In the book of Genesis we read, "And the Lord God planted a garden eastward in Eden, and the tree of life also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil." That's from the book of Genesis. This garden was in no earthly place. It exists even now in the very self of every human being. The legend of Adam and Eve is allegorical. It describes how the first human beings dissipated their spiritual energy centered in the spine. The spine is the channel through which flows the river of baptism and of spiritual life. The Bhagavad Gita tells us, "The wise speak of an eternal Ashvata tree with its roots above and its branches below." The tree of life, spoken of also in Genesis, is the spine. Its roots are above in the brain's energy. Its branches are the outward spreading nervous system. When the sap, which is to say the energy, flows downward, the consciousness is drawn into delusion. On the other hand, when the energy is drawn upward in deep meditation, the consciousness is drawn towards its eternal source, God, and is at last united with Him. Krishna, in the Bhagavad Gita, therefore urges his chief disciple, Arjuna, to embrace the yoga science, the path of meditation. The yogi, he says, is greater than the ascetic, greater than the followers of the paths of wisdom, jnana yoga, or of action, karma yoga. Be thou, O Arjuna, a yogi. For those who would find the divine truth, Krishna gives this description of the yogi. Steadfast a lamp burns, sheltered from the wind. Steadfastly meditating, solitary, such is the likeness of the yogi's mind. Shut from sense storms and burning bright to heaven. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
Everybody, and I'd like to read from Yogananda's Whispers from Eternity, the book of prayers and poems and inspiration for the spiritual aspirant. The one I'm going to read this morning, it's a little long, but I think it's worth it, and so I'm going to read. It's entitled, My Lost Music Sprang from the Heart of Everything. I heard sweet, enchanted music playing faintly beneath the sounds of my outer life, as if coming from forgotten dreams. Stilly, I listened, and the music grew more and more subtle, poignant, and sweet, drawing me inward until I could hear it no longer with my earthly ears. Patiently I waited, striving to think whether I'd ever heard earthly music like the divine nuances of these new melodies. No. In my rich storehouse of memory, I found no likeness to those enchanting sounds that had come and gone in my consciousness, like phantoms of idle reflection. Had I really heard that music? Or had I only imagined its sweet harmony? Was it the exquisite expression of my subtle, highest aspirations? Or was it only the sound of harmonious whispers of passing fancy? I waited deeply, inwardly. I listened. I entered through the portals of my subtle senses and walked in the garden of my dreams of eternity. At last I saw dancing in those dreams shining waves and bouncing wavelets of craving through countless earthly incarnations. Then I heard, coming faintly o'er the water, strains of many wondrous melodies. None, however, were like those soul recollections which I had heard before and lost. Suddenly, in deepest silence, those ancient sounds returned, swelling up from beneath hidden memories of my soul. And then that music engulfed in one huge billow all the waves and ripples of past craving, all delights and sorrows, all victories and failures, all expectations and disappointments of a myriad past lives. I needed no other sounds, no other vibrations of earthly fulfillment to satisfy my heart. Then it was that the lost music of my soul resounded at the heart of everything, pulsing from the very heart of all my private dreams. Ear hath never heard, thought hath never conceived, love hath never trembled with, dream hath never visualized, tongue hath never told, nor can any ever describe that long last, long forgotten, but yet anciently remembered music. Behind the curtain of life's ceaseless play, I found again, playing on harp strings of all deep feeling, the lost but now found beloved music of my soul. So I think that was worth it. Very, very beautiful, beautiful poem and prayer. What is this deathless life? What is this inner kingdom spoken of in so many scriptures of the world, and yet so little understood? I think whether people are hearing these words for the first time, very new on the path, the spiritual path, or whether one is a seasoned aspirant, I think we might agree that this inner kingdom, while real, is oftentimes elusive. There's a wonderful story in the life of Krishna, and Ananta and I periodically read from the Srimad Bhagavatam, and these stories are so sweet. In a way, they're perhaps appear fanciful or just not very relevant to the world in which we live, but there is tremendous teaching there, and it's certainly an enjoyable and inspiring read. And this one story is about Krishna. There's many of them. Krishna as a little, very little boy, and evidently he was a very mischievous little boy. Had a lot of fun and played a lot of pranks on his parents, his family, his brother and sisters, friends. And this one day, his brother, Rama, came running into the kitchen where his mother was, Yashoda, and said, "Mom, Krishna is stuffing handfuls of mud into his mouth, and you must come." And she was horrified, as any mother might be, their son just shoving mud into the mouth, and oh my gosh. So she goes running out there. She asks again of Rama, what was he doing? What was he doing? And she asks his friends, and she comes upon Krishna, and she grabs him by, this little tyke, just grabs him by the left hand and is ready to bring some order to the universe. And Krishna says, I'm not eating mud. They're not telling you the truth, Mom. And Krishna says to her, "Why don't you look in my mouth?" So Yashoda, being this sweet and loving and attentive mother, comes down to the level of her child, and he's opening his mouth wide, and she gazes into his mouth. And what she sees there is not what one might expect. She sees, in fact, the entire universe in his mouth. She sees the beginning of time, the end of time. She sees the forces of nature, of Prakriti, all the gunas interacting and creating and manifesting creation at the behest of the infinite. She sees all of this going on, oceans, giant oceans being formed, and the planet being made, and volcanoes, and life forms, and just on and on and on. And it's mesmerizing, it's captivating, and she fully is engaged in this infinite reality. She no longer sees her son. And then, within that mouth, she sees the little town of Gokula where they live. And then she sees herself, and then she sees herself gazing into her child's mouth, and it's all there. Everything that ever happened, that ever was, is there, and that ever will be in that mouth. And Krishna's watching her have this experience of infinity. And being the incarnation of the divine, of Narayan, the Lord himself, incarnated in this little body of Krishna, he then floods that vision with Maya. And again, Yashoda sees herself as the desperate mother trying to care for her child, be attentive to her child, and keep him protected. And so she comes back into that reality, and the other is gone, just gone. And there she is, the mother and the son and the children at play. And, again, you can say, how does this story, in fact, relate to any of us? Is it just fanciful? Why are all these bizarre stories told about Krishna and all these other incarnations of God and saints and what have you? But there is always a gem of truth there, a reminder. It's trying to kind of get through whatever the barriers are and remind us that within each one of us exists this infinite reality, this inner kingdom within each one of us. If we could look inside the way the masters look inside us and see us, we would see as they do this infinite reality, this spark of the infinite, residing within this little human body. That's each one of us. I remember when I first came to Ananda, I came for a summer program, and at the time I had to leave, I visited with Swami Kriyananda. I talked with him for a little while. I didn't say much. But he said, I was just asking, I'm going back to school, I'm going back to college, I have 1 quarter left. What am I going to do? And, how am I going to keep this alive within me? And he said, come back to our Christmas 8-hour meditation. Now, you have to think about this for a moment, because I had just learned how to meditate. I wasn't a Kriyaban, I wasn't putting in hours of meditation. I was very new to this. And yet, that's what Swamiji said. I don't think I was anyone special or unique. I think that he was and is in that consciousness that all of our masters, all of the great ones are in, that sees the divine potential, that relates to the divine potential, the divine reality, the inner kingdom within each one of us. So for Swamiji, he was welcoming, he was inviting me into that, and there were no barriers from his point of view. It didn't matter that I had only basically in the last couple months learned how to meditate. Didn't matter that I was 21 years old, It didn't matter that I was going off to college somewhere, or where I was from, or what color my skin was, or what I had achieved at this point in life, which was not much. Not much at all, I assure you. He was relating to the individual soul. And that invitation he was extending, as he would, I know, to every single one of us. He was speaking soul to soul. He was addressing that inner kingdom, that inner reality, and saying, come and join us in this experience. This is the most important thing you will ever experience, you will ever know. And so this universal reality, it's within each one of us. And perhaps we need to train ourselves. Perhaps we need to train ourselves to see it more readily, to remember that lost music that is who we are on a soul level, and to reacclimate to it, become familiar, very familiar with it. There's a wonderful story of Krishna older in life. Now he is about to exit the incarnation, the bodily temple of Lord Krishna. And one of his very dear friends, Uddhava was very close to Krishna and could see that very soon Krishna would be leaving this physical plane. He was beside himself. His whole world was turning upside down, a little bit like what we have now. Just a lot of commotion, a lot of chaos, and the ability to fairly easily sense things are going to be a little different now. And that's how Uddhava felt. It was, how am I going to live in this? How am I going to make sense of this without you, Krishna, right here? How can I go on? And Krishna said to Uddhava, well, he talked with him for quite a while about this and that and the other. And finally he said, Uddhava, he said, go to Badrinath. Badrinath is a holy place in India of pilgrimage, even today. But he wasn't speaking about that physical place, even though that's a very holy and sacred place to Krishna, to Badrinarayan as Krishna. But he was saying to Uddhava, go here to the spiritual eye, go to the inner kingdom, reside in the inner kingdom, because it is the only reality, and it is the only reality that's going to make any sense out of all of this. It's the only reality that's going to allow you to understand what is going on, why it's going on, and give you the strength and the courage to be a part of it, to do your part in it, to be present here on the physical plane as God has asked you to do and be. And so this was his advice to Uddhava, and this is what Uddhava did. And we have been given, as it says in the Festival of Light, we have been given the keys to unlock the mystic doors of awakening. This is the gift of our gurus, our line of gurus, this lineage, from one to the other. The keys, the mystic keys to unlock the door of inner realization of this inner kingdom. I like to think of it as the master key. It's the one that opens all of the doors, any door that we find ourselves in front of and need to have opened. Yogananda said that when he was in India, he knew a man there who had told him, had shared with him that he had been practicing, devotional practices for years. It had been 20 years or so, but he had never had that divine experience that he craved for. And Yogananda kept trying to get him to, you need to practice. You need to follow techniques that can help you by stilling the world outside and help you to go in and to see and hear what is we can all experience. We can all experience this. You can have this experience. But the man wouldn't listen to him. He was following a particular path. He had a particular way of doing it, and he felt obliged and loyal to that path. And Yogananda said, there's nothing I could do. But finally, I suspect Yogananda kept sort of poking at him a little bit and nudging him inwardly. And finally, he said that he would take Kriya, the Kriya Yoga, the technique of Kriya Yoga that Yogananda was offering. And Yogananda explained to him, he said, it's like you're in a building and you're beating on the walls, you're beating on the ceiling, you're beating on the floor, you're shaking the universe, but you're at the wrong place. You're not in front of the door. You're not at the door, and you don't have that which is going to open the door. And all I'm trying to give you is the key. All I'm trying to give you is the key so that you can open the door. And so the man took the practice, took the initiation of Kriya, did the practices, and Yogananda said in just a week, he had the experience that he had so desired of God, of the infinite. And so these are the gifts that we have been given, these sacred keys, these sacred techniques. And they're sacred because they reveal that inner world. They turn the energy, the attention aside from the extremities. Like Krishna said, go to Badranath, go into that inner kingdom. And they help that energy to move upwards and through the brain and into spirit, into that divine experience. The analogy is used in the reading this morning of a lamp exposed to the wind. And you've all seen that, I'm sure, of a candle. You put a candle by a draft, either an open window or the air conditioning unit, and that candle burns unevenly and it burns rapidly. The breeze shoves all the wax to one side. It just drips off in profusion, and the wick is exposed and the whole thing just goes out in very short order. But if you still that environment, if we enter in to the temple, the bodily temple, referred to as such because it's that place wherein we can have that divine experience. And if we shelter that energy, if we protect that energy and do what we can to raise that energy, then God is able to come in, and divine grace enters in and assists that process. That's what Divine Mother is waiting for, that we're interested enough, we're curious enough, we're desirous enough to live in that reality. And as Ananta read, it's not a lessening of the life experience. It's an enhancement. Because as we move that energy up, we expand in consciousness, we expand in wisdom, we can look at the world and we still see suffering, we still see hurt, we still see things that are very difficult and hard to watch, and we wish that others didn't have to go through them. But we have more of that divine view, and we realize that each one of those instances is part and package of what's going to liberate that soul and liberate other souls. It's all part of the divine plan. There's one more story I would like to share with you, and this is an occurrence that happened for Hare Krishna Ghosh, Yogananda's nephew, one of his nephews in India. And when Yogananda visited there, Hare Krishna was about 16, 17 years old. And Hare Krishna Ghosh's mother and Yogananda's youngest sister, Tamu, both of them, they were after Yogananda. They were pestering him. They wanted him to give them a divine experience, to show them God. And they kept asking him, can't blame him. Here's this enlightened master, this avatar. I would ask. We should all be asking, truly. We should be asking. We should be interested. And they were asking Master, but Master kept saying no. And he kept just, pushing them aside. And finally one day he said, okay, Hare Krishna, you come with me. And the four of them, Yogananda, Hare Krishna, Tamu, and Hare Krishna's mother, his name I can't think of at the time, went upstairs. And Yogananda said to Hare Krishna, draw the shade, bring across the curtain, and you sit here. And so Yogananda sat here, Hare Krishna next to him, and opposite them was Tamu and Hare Krishna's mother. And then Yogananda had them close their eyes, bring their attention into the deep spine, point between the eyebrows. And he asked them to be very still. And he then started to chant these different slokas, these sacred phrases from scripture, mantras. And he did that. And Hare Krishna watched with his eyes open. And he saw this great light coming over their faces. And he saw them just smiling, their faces just smiling, beaming in that light. And some time went by, and then Yogananda chanted a few more slokas, and they came out of the meditation. And Hare Krishna, you read about his life and stories. He was so purely and innocently inquisitive. He just wanted to know. And he asked his mother, "What did you see? What did you see, Mother? Tell me." And she said, "I can't describe in words the bliss that we were in." And then sometime later, Yogananda said to Hare Krishna Ghosh, because it wasn't enough, Hare Krishna said, what did you do? What did they see? And Yogananda said, "I showed them Bhagwan Jyoti. I showed them the light of God." And I love to read the words of that story, because that's Guru's grace put to words. That's the grace. And if we can just, stay in there, if we can just stay in there for the duration, of the journey, the most fantastic journey that we will ever walk, that we will ever adventure on in a human body, is the search for God. And if we can just stay in there for the duration of that journey and remain inquisitive, remain yearning, put out the best effort we can in any individual moment, then Guru's grace, the grace of these great ones, is going to open that door. Technique and grace, these are the mystic keys, and that divine hand is going to come in and unlock and open that door for each one of us. Thank you.